Hello! This week we're making cookies. If you watch Critical Role and you haven't seen season 3, episode 9 yet, be warned, there are minor spoilers ahead. They're super minor, but people get very sensitive about that thing, so just putting it out there. In season 3, episode 9, the characters go visit Lord Eshteross, and he has made a batch of cookies. I personally think that it is so awesome that this big hulking orc character bakes cookies and cakes, and the way that Matt portrays it is just fantastic. Previously, we made the Shadow Baker cinnamon rolls, which I will link below, and now I have to make these cookies from Lord Eshteross. In the show, the cookie was described as a maple cookie with ginger, and then Laudna noted turmeric in the cookie. When looking up a recipe to use for this, or at least get some inspiration from, I found a lot of maple cookies with ginger in them, but the recipe was basically a chocolate chip cookie replacing the sugar with maple syrup and then omitting the chocolate chips and adding ginger. And that might be super great, but I instead decided to go for using a recipe from Claire Saffitz's book Dessert Person, which I will link below, for chewy molasses cookies. They have a bunch of spices in them that I think would add a really good kick, and in my head anyway, they really match with Lord Eshteross's whole persona and character more. I wanted a cookie with some more oomph. So we're gonna bake these and hopefully they'll turn out really good. Let's go.
We'll start the cookie dough by mixing the dry ingredients: 488 grams of all-purpose flour, 18 grams of baking soda, 2.5 teaspoons of ground ginger, a half teaspoon of turmeric, a half teaspoon of ground black pepper, a half teaspoon of ground allspice, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves, and a pinch of salt. In a separate bowl, we'll mix 170 grams of melted and cooled butter with 300 grams of brown sugar until fluffy. Then add 2 eggs, one at a time, mixing between additions. Then add 160 grams of molasses, 9 grams of apple cider vinegar, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and beat until well combined. Then we'll add the flour gradually, letting the dough mix in between additions and scraping the bowl down as needed to make sure all the flour is incorporated. The dough will be very soft and fairly sticky at this point. Next, we're going to divide and chill the dough. Chilling cookie dough is always a great idea for a couple of reasons, but especially when using butter as the fat. Butter begins to melt at just 85 degrees. It doesn't take very much. Even at room temperature, butter is quite soft. If you usually keep your butter on the counter, you'll know that it's a lot softer and easier to spread when it's not straight from the fridge. But that's not how we want our cookie dough when it goes in the oven. Cookies only spend 7 to 15 minutes on average in the oven, which is not very long. When cookies go into the oven, the butter will melt, causing the cookie to spread. The colder the cookie dough is when it goes into the oven, the longer it will take for the butter to melt and spread out, resulting in a thicker cookie. If the cookie dough is already at room temperature when it's put into the oven, spreading will occur sooner because it takes less time for the butter to melt and continue throughout the baking time, resulting in a thinner cookie and potentially burning it. If you've had troubles with cookies coming out thin and spreading out way too much, try chilling the cookie dough for a few hours or even overnight before forming them into baking. This is a good general rule for any cookie, but especially this one we're making here. Also, if they're the type of cookies you'll need to punch out with cookie cutters or cut into shapes, like sugar cookies, it'll make cutting them out easier because the dough will be more firm. If you're interested in cookies, check out my Cookie Basics series. I'll put a link in the description. Once the cookie dough is chilled and we're ready to bake, line 2 cookie sheets with parchment paper or silpats and preheat the oven to 350 degrees. We're going to roll the dough into around 28 gram balls. I like to actually measure the weight of the first 1 or 2 balls to get an accurate idea of the size and then continue making the rest about the same. It doesn't have to be perfect, but generally staying around the same size will give you a better bake on all the cookies. As we roll them, we're also going to roll them in some demerara sugar, which is a large crystal sugar that will add a little bit of crisp texture and bite to the outside of the cookie. Then we're going to arrange the sheet pans in the upper and lower third of the oven and bake for 7 minutes, and then switch them and bake for another 7 minutes. If you're not baking all the cookies, you can also separate out some of the dough and freeze it for 1 to 2 months. I like to store cookie dough in the freezer, patting down plastic wrap on the top to keep it from forming a crystalline layer, and then use a dry erase marker on the lid to write down the type of cookie, the date that I made the dough, and the baking instructions, heat and time, so that I don't have to look it up again when I go to bake them. When they're done, allow them to cool for 10 to 15 minutes on the sheet tray. Then transfer to a wire rack. Wow, that's very hard to say. Allowing them to cool completely before eating them all in one go or storing them in an airtight container. These are soft cookies, and storing them in an airtight container will keep them soft.
Well, they look really good. They've got like this nice cracking on the top, and they baked really nicely. They smell really good. Let's try. Nice and soft in the middle. Soft like a molasses cookie, but it has a bit more like zing. I think these would make Lord Eshteross proud. If you like this video or you learned something, give it a like. If you'd like to learn more, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Is it Thursday yet?